Yeah, boy.
This here is the Glowstone Backpack, and I already know what some of you are thinking. How on earth could this be something that you need? Well, I'll admit, the Glowstone Backpack is a bit underwhelming. It lights up, effectively getting rid of your need for a lantern, but it also slows your dodge roll and only has a 75 carrying capacity. Not super helpful, and hardly anyone really uses this thing. However, this backpack has a really cool quest tied to it, and if you don't try and reach it, you might lose out on a large portion of Outward's story. To get the Glowstone Backpack, you first need to start your faction quest. None of the parallel or side quests can be started until you join a faction, so this gets the ball rolling. Once this is done, you can start the Purifier quest. This is a side quest in the Hollowed Marsh or Swamp region that has to do with murder, kidnapping, and more murder. Pretty enticing, I know. To start this quest, you need to find a dead member of the Holy Mission. He will be wearing bright white robes and only shows up in 2 locations. There's a spot near the entrance to Chersonese in the swamp where you can find him among some dead dinos. I don't think this is a guaranteed location, however, because he wasn't there for me on this character. If you take a look at your map, however, you can see the guaranteed location of his body. The small camp can be found in the very middle of the swamp, right near the Pilgrim's Road. This is just to the right of the dead tree on the left of your map. Interact with the body and you will gain a quest. Technically, you should go into town and discuss your findings with several people to get the most of the story. But for our purposes, we're just going to head west and enter the dungeon in the middle of that large tree there. I will warn you, this cave isn't the easiest thing in the world. There are 2 Immaculates you need to fight and many bandits. A few of them are armed with heavy armor and weaponry as well. Once you've started the Purifier quest, a series of books or notes will be lying around this dungeon. Your goal is to find and read them all. This grants you lore and also a key at the end. I'm not going to read any of this dialogue until the end of the video for several reasons, so let's just get into where these are at. At the very bottom of this first set of stairs here, you will see what looks like a wall covered up by plants. It's actually a hidden door. Enter and you will be met with corruption and 1 Immaculate. After taking care of him, one of the notes will be open on the table. Read it and continue heading down. Luckily, this is a fairly linear dungeon, so it's easy to not get lost. Once you reach a staircase with some cages along the wall, you will find another note on the small table there. Fun fact, these cages are being used to lock up priests. At the bottom of those same stairs, there will be another note on a table. Be very careful here and in the next area, as there are 2 heavily armored swamp bandits who can sometimes delete half your health in a single bow shot. Traps are always nice, or pure brute force works as well. But don't let them gang up on you. Here in the next room, you will find a strange door with a Taunosaur head on it. It's locked up pretty tight and you won't be able to enter yet, but remember it for later. Head down a ramp now, and at the bottom you'll find possibly 2 bandits, but at least the last note. It's in a corner and will grant you a key. There are 4 total notes in this dungeon. You need to read 3 of them to complete this quest, but if you want everything, including this key, you need to read all 4 notes. The only hidden one is the one being protected by an Immaculate, so now that you know where it is, it should be pretty easy to find. With the key in pocket, head back up to the door with the Taunosaur head. Inside, you will find a smaller cave to enter, which contains corruption and 2 Scourge enemies. They're not super difficult to deal with, but again, ever fighting 2 enemies at the same time is a recipe for disaster. So finish off the little guy quickly or bait the Immaculate further up the stairs. There's a cool altar area here, as well as an ornate chest and 1 additional note containing some lore. Hidden in the corner here is the Glowstone Backpack. It's super easy to pass up this extra cave and super easy to miss this backpack in the corner here. Additionally, you can only get this backpack during the Purifier quest. Fail it and it's lost forever. I highly recommend doing this while on the second part of your faction quest or even the first. As soon as you start the third major quest for your faction, you lose this entire thing immediately. So the backpack itself is kind of meh, not super helpful in most situations, and just a cool thing to find. Honestly, my favorite looking backpack, especially when walking around, as it leaves a glowing trail behind you. But extra light is nowhere as good as less stamina cost, more damage, or even just more carrying capacity. So why did I say that you need it? 2 reasons, in fact. You see, Outward has an incredible amount of world building. Your choices affect the outcome of the story as well as what rewards you're offered and how much you learn about what's going on. The Purifier quest exemplifies this to a T. If you get to the end of your faction quest, you're forced to defend Monsoon against a siege of Scourge enemies. Unless you chose Sorobor Academy, of course, as that has a different ending. But if you choose any of the regular 3 factions, you might notice there are 2 Immaculates in the middle of town fighting some guards. What's cool is if you complete this Purifier quest and kill the 2 Immaculates in that dungeon, they will not be here for this fight. Your actions in the midway point of the game directly affect the ending and can make it easier or much more difficult. You also get more guards to help you battle these monsters by turning in the information you learn. Skip this quest and you could potentially be forced to fight 3 Immaculates at the same time with no help. It just shows how much is affected here, and I only recently noticed this after playing Outward for hundreds of hours. Now, the second reason you need this backpack is purely for lore, because if you played Outward before it had any DLCs, you might have noticed that the story itself predicted these 2 DLCs would be coming. I'm going to be reading the lore of this dungeon or quest here, but just know the entire plot of the Soroborians DLC faction quest is explained by this side quest. Your failure in that recent raid is unacceptable. There can't be witnesses. Do you know what the Sorobor Academy does to loose ends who screw up? We risk being eliminated if our operation is discovered. Is that clear? Instructions from the boss in Berg were clear. Never let those monsters near the prison cells. They will slaughter the prisoners out of sheer instinct. We can't keep kidnapping more of Elat's missionaries without risking serious consequences. We aren't pleased with this arrangement either. Even with the aid of that Soroborian, there's only so much we can do with just 1 mage. More aid will be coming in the next few months, so be patient. If I catch you talking to the test subjects one more time, I swear to you, lad, I will have your head. If they find out that we're trying to learn to manipulate and control them, they will slaughter us all. You've seen what they've done to the prisoners. Do you want that to be us next? The human Jaeger Sullivan promised us he would find a way to free us from our rage towards the enemy. We must trust in him. But do not be stupid. If he does not have a solution after 2 full moons, leave without warning. The pieces are coming together. Someone from the Sorobor Academy is arming these bandits. But for what end, you're not quite sure. You should let someone with power in the Blue Chamber Collective know. The Chamber Lord of Monsoon would also probably be very interested in knowing that such a dangerous group has been operating so close to his city. We suspect he may have other motives in mind, and the longer we stay in this marsh under the shadow of the enemy, the greater our chances of being discovered and killed. Take no risks, my kin. We Immaculates always stand alone in this world. At last, everything is clear. These Immaculates were working with Jaeger Sullivan to find a way to overcome their instinctual rage against those who bear the spirit of Elat. Jaeger Sullivan and his crew were essentially arming marsh bandits with Levantine weapons so that they could easily kidnap priests of Elat and use them as test subjects. The priests were often killed because they had not found a way to stop the Immaculates' rage. This is why there are 2 Immaculates in that dungeon and why the many cages are empty. The bandits and Jaeger have failed in their experiments thus far and are being found out because they have to keep taking priests so often. Eventually, if the player chooses to take the Soroborians faction quest, you do find a way to cure the Immaculate's rage, through rune magic no less. But it's interesting to see the difference between that quest and how Jaeger was going about it all wrong. Every action by an NPC in Outward comes from a good place. One person trying to do something for the greater good. But most do it in the wrong way, and all actions negatively impact someone down the line. So that is why you need the Glowstone Backpack. Not because it's the best or has some hidden feature, but because it's associated with one of the craziest quests in the game. Miss this bag, and you've missed one of the major plot points that greatly affects the game's endfight. So next time you think about making fun of this backpack, myself included no less, think again. It might be more significant than we realize. Thanks for watching the video, and hopefully you found it interesting. Outward has a crazy cool story, but sometimes it's challenging to piece together. And before I leave you yet again, I have one little theory I'd like to throw at you. What if the Glowstone Backpack is actually a failed experiment? What if it was infused with power during the experiments with the Immaculates as a way for one person to become immune to their rage? Members of the Holy Mission could wear it and not instantly attract the anger of the Immaculates. Hence why it's a cool backpack that doesn't really have much use. It's a failed creation. Who really knows, but it does get one thinking.